sail on a ship. To the stars we shall roll. Through the vastness.
Greetings, ladies and melodians, and welcome to the stream. Good afternoon, Postmatic. Hope you're doing well.
Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty.
I just need to get with the clickety-clacks, get everything sorted.
Constellations charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never from the
Nope, that's the wrong button.
Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes. We'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage.
Yarg is the goal. It is always the goal.
Sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. I think that is it. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people put a lot of, what would you say, confidence into the notification system. So, yeah, it's always a thing. That's why we sit and chat for a little bit, wait for people to wander in, wait for the notifications to get out, and that sort of stuff. That's very true. That's very true. Although I've heard that the Twitch notifications are a lot better than the YouTube notifications. Zolzols, greetings. Welcome to the beginning of the stream. Hope you're doing well. Or as well as can be. Oh, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Getting ready to record. Oh, excuse me. Boomer Juice. Fighting back, as always. But now that I'm not wearing the top headphones, I actually have to be conscious of my hair don't. Although, it's also nice and comfy to wear a baseball cap now, without the other headphones. You know, migraine is mostly lifted. There's a little bit of lingering pain in the one eye, but nothing too drastic. Hopefully, with the new medications, the migraine should decrease. So, consequence of having low iron and low vitamin D is headaches and migraines. Took my first supplements today, so within a week to a month, my levels of iron and vitamin D should hit optimal levels. So we'll see how that goes. I've also started doing some neck exercises every 2 days just to strengthen the neck, loosen the muscles, that sort of stuff. Nothing groundbreaking, just some neck exercises. Hopefully that'll work. I've tried them in the past, but whenever I try them, all the muscles in my neck stiffen up and then I get a migraine. Which is kind of like my body saying, probably shouldn't do that. But from everything that I read, I just need to push through it gently, exercise, strengthen the muscles, and hopefully it'll also strengthen the voice a bit. Since the host of other medications, voice is doing a bit better. A lot less acid reflux eating away at the vocal cords. So that's a good thing. Dietary changes are incoming. Oh, as of last night, they started. Which should also help with acid reflux, but also my cholesterol problem. So, we have a plan. The problem is sticking to the plan. But I am happy that the diabetes isn't flaring up or anything, or gotten worse. Honestly, I'd prefer a nosebleed to a migraine. Depending on the nosebleed. If we're talking about the nosebleed that sent me into hospital, I would rather not have that one. I'd rather have a migraine. Because that particular nosebleed gave me the worst migraine I've ever had. What's that day? Wednesday. Hump day. Hump day. Nah. Throughout my life, I've been quite lucky with nosebleeds. I haven't really had a problem with them. Only had a problem with them after the sinus operation. They seem to have calmed down now. And not just like the big one that sent me into an emergency operation. The just general nosebleeds. Never really had a problem with it. Maybe if I was like sneezing a lot, it would get raw and bleed, but that's understandable. But migraines I've had since forever. I remember in my early 20s, before I figured out that they were migraines, I just thought they were debilitating headaches. I would go to work and just, oh my God, that would be awful work. And then I would go home and just pour a scalding hot bath and just lie there with my nose sticking out the water so I can breathe. Just my whole head below the water for hours, just trying to get through the migraine. And the headache tablets I was taking like candy didn't help at all. No, that's good. It's good. Thankfully, it's nothing too serious or permanent, Zalzal. Head trauma can be quite a thing. Especially concussions. Yeah. I mean, I've had my fair share of concussions. Although not too many. My wife seems to have a knack for concussing herself. Scars are cool. I'm told. But hey, if all you got out of it was a scar, then that was a good operation. With no lingering effects, perfect operation. Good afternoon, Samantha. Hope you're doing well. And thank you very much for the sharing. I think this is the first time you've been to the new time slot. Yeah, well, that's a bit rough, losing 6 teeth. Oh, yeah, I've got tons. Tons and tons of scars. Especially on my arms. And my legs. And the top of my head. Just randomly. The Grand Brown has become a member. Thank you very much for your membership. It's super appreciated. So yeah, I don't tend to cut my hair too short. Although when it's hot, I like to just go with like a number 1. Just shave the head. However, you know, it doesn't look great when you go outside with a shaved head, and being me. But first time my wife ever saw me do that, there was like, I don't know, she counted like 10 scars all over my head from, I don't know, life. Thank you, Shadow, and welcome. Very much appreciated. I think it's going to take a while for new people to migrate to the new time slot. I think overall it's going to better suit everybody. It allows me to warm up my voice properly for a couple hours. Maybe get some exercise in before the stream. I mean, now I'm starting the stream on 3 liters of water while drinking the 4th liter of water. So hydration should be good. But the only thing I think we need to, we, the channel, need to figure out is they reckon that 4 hours is the optimal time to stream. I don't know how to do that. Not with the content that I
it's
do.
raining subscriptions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the gifted subscription, Postmedic. Super appreciated. So, yeah. After 3 hours of narrating, I can tell you what I don't feel like doing. Talking. So, a silent last hour, I don't think gets much views. I also don't want to push the vocal cords to 4 hours a day of streaming/recording because that's a bit much. That's a super fast way to get laryngitis. Pick up my vocal cords and, you know, start the process all over again. Zolzols, I don't like water at all. But gotta do what you gotta do. I mix my monsters with my water now. Just to make it taste like not water. And then you just do what you gotta do. Now, I mean, little known fact, not necessarily on this channel, but as a voice user, shall we say, the first thing that gets dehydrated is the vocal cords, and the last thing to get rehydrated is the vocal cords. So you need to drink excess water to keep your vocal cords suitably hydrated. Yeah. I mean, strangely enough, Portugal doesn't have a lot of concentrate stuff. And all the stuff they do have is citrus, so I can't drink it. I tried gamer subs, but the flavor to caffeine ratio is a bit bleh. So if I put like 1 scoop in, the caffeine is good. That's the caffeine of a Monster energy drink, but the taste is very, very meh, not strong enough. But if I put in to taste, then I'm drinking way too much caffeine, which I know is blasphemous, but there is an upper limit for me. So at the moment, I'm just mixing my boomer juice with my water. Fair enough. I mean, I had a messed up. When I started this channel, my sleep schedule was completely degenerate. I'd sleep twice a day, between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning, and then between 12 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then every other moment I was working. Either recording or editing, except for an hour. Me and the wife made a promise that regardless of whatever the hell I'm doing with the channel, we sit down and eat dinner together. So there's an hour carved out of every day, regardless of what I'm doing. We sit down and we eat with each other. Well, unfortunately, I gotta sleep. Quickest way to ruin a voice is to not sleep. I've turned into a diva in my old age, and I'm not terribly happy about it. But it is what pays the bills, so we do what we gotta do. Try to get 8 hours sleep, exercise, take drugs. Not drugs, but medications. Get on with it. Very much. Sleep is a work expense, definitely. I'm going to use that one in the future. If I don't take my sleeping pill, I don't sleep. Literally. I'll just lie there for 6 hours. Maybe get half an hour's sleep. Not very conducive to a healthy voice. But regardless, I think we shall move on to some recording. We've been faffing about for 18 minutes. People have strolled in. Got 7 people watching on Twitch, 5 people watching on YouTube, and nobody watching on Twitter. I'm shocked. Shocked? I'm not that shocked. Okay, lower the volume. Okay, so today is... this is my recording schedule for those of you who haven't seen it. Today we're doing all the stuff in green. I am Onyx. Yes, I am. I've always had an X account because it's the easiest way to get a hold of YouTube. But I upgraded to premium. What did I do? Oh, there was a specific reason why I did that. Oh, to push my posts out more. And then I just post about my videos, talk some shit maybe, and then stream to it. Nah, you don't have to, Marcus. It's all good. It cost me literally... I wouldn't say it cost me nothing because I had to upgrade my restream. But it cost me minimal to stream to another platform. Give me a second. Shadow. Here we are. Profile. Live. There we go. There is the link for the Twitter, X, whatever. X is better, because then I don't get it confused with Twitch, like I was doing yesterday. All right. Okay. Moving on to... Oh, I was explaining the spreadsheet for anybody who's new or watching a VOD or anything. So this is my recording schedule. Each one of these lines is a day. This peachish line is today. It's automated. So yeah, these are series, these are TFOS and re-TFOS. I record 4 videos a day. Well, I release 4 videos a day. I record more. Today we're doing green, which is just re-TFOS and TFOS. Tomorrow we'll be doing probably nature predators. Friday more re-TFOS and TFOS. Sunday will be the human in the dungeon. And yes, I am cursed, so whenever I get a week ahead, I get sick, or break something, or have to have emergency surgery, or move countries, or something. Thank you very much, Shadow. Thank you very much. So yes, whenever I get a week ahead, something, the universe, says enough. Oh, cricket crack, cricket crack. Okay, so on to re-TFOS number 1. Greetings, ladies and metalheads, and welcome to this latest edition of re-TFOS, where I take stories from across the... Greetings, ladies and metalheads, and welcome to this latest edition of re-TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called EmpireCrasher.exe, Why Humans Should Never Have an Intergalactic Internet Connection. Written by Adriel. When a new species enters the galactic community, quite a few things need to happen. After passing all the red tape, ensuring the species isn't a terrorist nightmare, the species needs a connection to Galnet. We hooked up 8 different subspace nodes to link humanity's infrastructure to ours, each one capable of 15 exabytes per second. Protocol said a planet of their size and level of technological achievement should be comfortable in 6, but we've been wrong before, and wrong we were. We flipped the switch, opening the floodgates of intergalactic communications. Libraries began downloading billions of books from many thousands of cultures. Hospitals began scouring the archives for medical treatments, blueprints for advanced tech. Histories of speech and recipes for strange meals began flooding into the human homeworld. Of course, not everything human is... Of course, not everything humans do. Of course, not everything humans do is practical. When they discovered the Talazar show leopard looked similar to a kitten, albeit with the wrong number of appendages, they went nuts. A sudden burst of traffic to the Talazar homeworld crippled their internet infrastructure, somehow resulting in a few fatalities. Every time something from another planet went viral, the server that hosted the content would explode. Yes, explode. With fire and everything. Let's just say that when most species discovers that you can get 600-meter long Prismaridian. Okay. Prismaridium. Let's just say that when most species discovers that you can get a 600-meter long Prismaridian sea dragon drunk, millions of people don't all want to see videos of it at once. 2 of our subspace nodes had already been destroyed. One went down when humans learned that the people of Kazavak Prime looked and acted like giant weeble wobbles. The others went down when they discovered that these people enjoy sumo wrestling. By the 10-minute mark, several militaries felt the need to step in. Those server outages looked suspiciously like targeted attacks, and when you take out critical infrastructure, it's hard to see it as anything other than an act of war. By the 15-minute mark, 11 different species had declared war on humanity. Thankfully, ships traveled much slower than news that the galactic equivalent of the Guinness Book of World Records existed. It listed the longest distance traveled by strapping yourself to a firework as only 2,000 kilometers. A wave of videos starring humans strapping themselves to fireworks and shooting off into the stratosphere took down their third node. A fourth was taken down when one of them ran into it, unleashing a very colorful explosion that could be seen from the surface. At the 25-minute mark, a new problem emerged. Humans have a knack for writing malware, and while they also have a knack for defending against it, most species do not. Hundreds of star systems started reporting problems, as ransomware programs started releasing terabytes of top-secret information every minute until the Prismaridium sent 10,000 in cash to an address in western Texas. This was challenged because they were about 200 light-years away, which would take weeks even with a very fast ship. A wave of self-replicating malware hijacked one of the subspace nodes, injecting copies of itself into every connection that wasn't well encrypted. Once it discovered that some alien systems didn't check the files they received at all, it started replacing them with 200-gigabyte packages of every nasty virus it could. It started replacing them with 200-gigabyte packages of every nasty virus it could find. The extra bandwidth destroyed the node. 2 fleets of automated warships that were engaging in a battle suddenly stopped their conflict and began salvaging themselves for raw metal, discarding valuable tech and destroying their engines in the process. The malware responsible was designed to make construction vehicles on Earth sell themselves for scrap. Within 2 minutes of opening their networks to Earth, the entire economy of Trivik 4 was transferred to a Nigerian prince. This email appeared to come from an observer, a gas giant-sized computer that managed surveillance of the entire sector. It now used every ounce of its processing power to mine Bitcoin and send scam emails to the galaxy. No one had ever Greetings, Michael. Hope you're doing well. No one, or as well as can be. No one had ever expected malware on human systems to be so common and so complex. Humanity figured our technology would handle it, and when they brought it up, we thought they were joking. The chaos this mistake caused was immense. At the 48-minute mark, Google began indexing the entirety of Galnet, and all hope was lost. Their apparently unlimited supply of bandwidth destroyed the two of the nodes instantly, and the 8th and final node went down in a ball of flame after all humanity's internet traffic was channeled through it. With that, humanity had been cut off from Galnet, but the damage was done. The galaxy would probably spend decades cleaning the malware from their systems. In 45 minutes, multiple empires had crashed, and at least one accidental genocide took place. The Galnet Tech Empire was affected the most. Their entire system, from military vessels to government mainframes to robots that swept their floors, was under full malware control. The culprit was literally started as a joke from a freshman in college studying for a computer science degree. It wasn't designed to work and could be detected by even the worst of anti-malware programs. Unfortunately, the Galactic Empire put all their eggs in one basket. All of their internet traffic was channeled through a single massive firewall that cleaned everything and managed to evade all the adware humanity could throw at them. Unfortunately, This firewall also hosted some extremely high-definition video of a species that looked a lot like Groot, so you can imagine what happened. The Great Firewall fell, quite literally actually. It landed on the planet it was orbiting, causing an earthquake that leveled most of it. This joke of a virus was the first one to get it, and the chaos began instantly. The virus secretly took control of the military research division of the Empire and began constructing a fleet of warships designed to deploy large mechs to ground fights. Two models existed. One modeled after a standard bipedal species designed to use its arms as melee weapons if needed. The other looked like a combination of large reptile and pile of guns. It was dripping with missiles, plasma cannons, and other weapons. The military went on a tour, showing off their new toys to the people whose tax dollars paid for them. On the final day, their pride and joy began recreating a classic Earth movie, Godzilla vs. King Kong. Millions died, and the capital city was destroyed. Fighting alongside them was every car, hovercraft, and self-aware toaster within range. If they didn't have a gun, they ran into their enemy or tossed each other at them. By the end of the day, humanity had been accused of using their malware to take over the galaxy. Their weaponized viral videos got them charged with war crimes, and a grand total of 705 different worlds declared war on them. Estimates for the amount of infrastructure damaged are still being estimated, but it's expected to be in the quintillions. Humanity promised to teach the galaxy how online security works, and quickly became the leading authority in avoiding malware. Once people knew how powerful malware could be, it was quickly added to the growing list of military tactics. Once the galaxy had been given a few months to figure out how security works, humanity plans to build 75 subspace nodes to make sure they don't explode. End of story. Oopsie doopsie. Apparently, humanity has a voracious appetite. A need for viral videos. Doot. Do not remember who did this. So I shall title. Oh, now there's several stories that use the premise of malware, internet traffic. Alrighty, on to story number 2. 269-2. 269-2 now what? Story number 2. Now what are they doing? Written by Unknown. The overseer watched from a safe distance. Thousands of them had gathered at the shore, lying about, cooking, imbibing toxic fluids, and generally, apparently, having a good time. Do they know of the radiation? Both biologic and anthropic floated. Do they know about the radiation? Both biologic and anthropic floated nearby, watching the same scene as their master. They'd both been studying the humans for quite some time, and had begun to understand them, at least a little. Anthropic spoke. Indeed. Anthropic spoke first, tendrils pointing to a group of younglings. They do seem to do this for recreation, in herd sizes ranging from 2 or 4 to upwards of 20 and more. They often bring appliances for burning meats, flasks or metallic containers for ethanol, diluted, of course, and flavored, and simply lay about. Biologic added, Our chief advisor states that this is known as a holiday,
Sometimes a beach party.
But why? Why bother? What purpose? But why? What purpose does this serve? Do all humans do this?
Biologic and anthropic. Biologic, let anthropic answer that one.
Well, yes and no. Some humans come from water. Some humans come from winter colder climates.
That's not the voice I used. What voice did I use?
Well,
One was snooty. The other one was boorish.
well, yes and no. Some humans come from wetter, colder climates. They often travel to planets with warmer standard temperatures for a week or longer, perhaps once or twice or so a year.
Are they basking like the Nickelodeons? Are they basking like the Nickelodeons do?
No, overseer. Humans are warm-blooded animals. They do not wear thermosuits to regulate temperature in the same way cold-blooded beings do.
Anthropic interjected.
So they do dress accordingly to extreme temperatures. Thicker clothes in the cold, less or lighter clothing in the heat.
I see.
They spoke to a passing human.
I
see.
He spoke to a passing human. Voice broadcast through an external speaker.
Human, please answer my query. Are you aware of the risks of absorbing copious amounts of ultraviolet on a biological being such as yourself?
He paused, quizzical look on his face.
Well, yeah. We've been doing this for eons. Love a beer and a Barbie on the beach.
Are you from Earth originally?
That's right. He beamed at them.
Australia.
Biologic and Anthropic both sent to the Overseer their information on the southern country. The human continued, ignoring the Overseer's surprised bleeps.
Down there, this is considered cold.
Cold? You are aware the sun here is closer to this planet than Sol is to Earth?
The man shrugged, still smiled.
It is, but we've got sunscreen.
Sun cream? Sunscreen.
But we've got sun cream. That's the trick. Hey,
he pulled a quartet of metallic cans from his satchel.
Fancy a beer?
Biologic spoke.
We unfortunately cannot partake in the processing of biological substances, but thank you.
The can hissed as he cracked it, taking a swig.
No worries, more for me.
He sauntered off, sipping his beer, joining a group that appeared to be playing some sort of game involving a flat, circular dish of plastic.
They sit in the sun, becoming irradiated, dehydrating from ethanol ingestion, cooking themselves. That results in cancers and burns. Allow children to run about fully exposed. They do this for fun?
Indeed,
Overseer.
Biologic sent another data packet.
Though they do receive some natural benefits, there are certain vitamins and chemicals produced, much like photosynthesis in plant-based life, the humans require. But they could receive these nutrients orally or by injection, no?
Well,
Anthropic spoke now, hesitating.
I believe I am correct in thinking that this is the more fun. I believe I am correct in thinking that this is more fun. Mammals appear to become more active in sunlight and warmth, report a feeling generally better, and seem more amicable than in wintertime.
It is almost as if they are natural solar batteries.
Biologic sent a string of ones and zeros representing mirth.
My team and I have expressed the same idea, Overseer. It seems that their status as Death Wielders has given them many odd physiological benefits.
They seem vulnerable to these benefits, however,
Anthropic said.
They often abuse them, or overdo it, as the chief advisor would put it.
The vise... The overseer floated there. Processing silently. Then,
How's Cole? I've not seen him in some time.
He's off-world, having a holiday.
Where?
He's on the ice world at the moment.
the overseer groaned digitally.
You mean they also take holidays in extreme cold as well?
Yes, and at great heights, subterranean locales, deep sea, and on barren moons. I can send the full report over, along with Yes.
Yes, then at great heights, subterranean locales, deep sea, and on barren moons, I can send the full report over, along with anthropics entries on extreme... Along with anthropics entries on extreme sports, death-defying stunts, and dangerous magics and accounting. Accounting? Yes, Overseer. It seems to be one of the most dangerous human pastimes. They are not geared towards math, and it seems that sitting in a small space doing sums is very detrimental to their physical and mental health. The Overseer broadcast a static buzz of disbelief. Utterly bizarre creatures. What sounds to us like paradise is the worst nightmare. What sounds like paradise to us? What sounds to us like paradise is worse. What sounds to us like a paradise is their worst nightmare. It's times like this I wish we could drink. By all accounts, it sounds like it helps.
Well, Overseer, I actually have an interesting records on that.
No, Biologic. That's not for now.
Very good. Then, if there's nothing else, I think I might go with Anthropic and study the humans up close.
You're going sunbasking, aren't you?
It's, sunbathing, actually.
No good, well, that's fine. Enjoy yourself. You become more like them every day. It concerns us on the higher council that one day you might become too human.
No, Overseer, Anthropic said cheerfully. Not a chance of that.
Why not?
Well,
Biologic said, also cheerily. Humans don't have the risk of getting sent to their servos.
Humans don't have a risk of getting sand in their servos, just catching various illnesses. We're much safer.
Until someone buries you in the sand.
Oh, we didn't realize that you were aware of that custom.
By the universal circuits,
saw the Overseer. Being buried alive for fun. Does their madness know no bounds?
Biologic raised his tendrils in a worryingly close facsimile of a human shrug.
It seems not, though it is fun.
Fun?
The Overseer hissed.
It is not for beings like us. Go and mingle with the mad mammals down there.
He turned and left. When he was out of broadcast range, Biologic turned to Anthropic. As they made their way towards the waves lapping the shore.
Do you think the Overseer is right, that we're becoming more human? I think he's a moaning old bastard. A very human thing to say, Anthropic, maybe. But it's a sentiment you agree with, yes?
Biologics chuckled digitally again.
It is, my friend, it is. And you're right, he is a moaning old bastard. Let us go and try to have some fun.
End of story. I will be back in a minute. I leave you with music and chair.
Set sail on a ship, to the stars we shall roam, through the vastness of space, no place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
And back. Welcome, welcome, Alex. Hope you're doing well this day, or as well as can be. This is 80, 70, 370, 270, 270. Yeah, there's a couple about Victoria, as far as I remember. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Elves. Dwarves and goblins laughed at humans for not having magic. The humans laughed at the elves, dwarves, and goblins for not having giant robots. Written by Knevri. The 74th Grand Crusade was turning out to be the most profitable the Imperium had ever seen. The world that had Archons The world that the Archons had brought them to was aflush with technology, resources, and slaves. High General Zephyr grinned broadly as he observed his forces sweeping through the enemy capital. All the people here were clearly advanced. Their architecture, while obviously not comparable to that of the Imperium high cities, had a sort of rustic charm. They certainly was a far cry from many of the stone and mud structures the Zephyr had crushed in so many previous campaigns. The Uruk hordes had been able to rampage mostly unchecked through the city, generally slaughtering anything in their path. Occasionally, the brutes hit heavier resistance when the locals would group up with their strange personal cannons. Such blockages were quickly crushed by supporting Phoenix warriors. The brutish kinetic weapons were simply unable to damage the holy armor of the elven warriors. Zephyr couldn't keep the grin off his face. He had led dozens of campaigns, but this would be the one that made him. With the subjugation of this realm, he would have the resources to rise to the highest reaches of the Imperium authority. With the subjugation of this realm, he would have the resources to rise to the highest reaches of Imperium authority. Nothing could stand in his way. The plan was brilliant, and it was going off exactly as he had envisioned. Zephyr used his Archon to warp his entire keep right into the middle of the capital of the nation with the greatest military. With the rapid destruction of their command structure, the rest of the realm would easily
the rest of the realm would be easily broken apart and crushed beneath the warrior's heels. And crushed beneath his warrior's heels. Few portals flickered in and out of existence surrounding Zephyr as he observed the battle going on throughout the sprawling city. The devastation from the explosion of magical energy caused by the fortress transportation had flattened several square miles of the metropolis, and seems to have caused major damage and fires throughout most of the surrounding structures. Zephyr flicked between portals rapidly. He had always been a hands-on commander. This campaign was no different. By giving orders on a squad level, he was able to push his forces deep into the embattled surroundings.
Spifflemonk still spifflemonking. I think he did a loot haul. He got sent stuff recently. Spifflemonk, not the author.
Into the embattled surroundings. The majority of his forces were heading straight for an enormous temple that the Archons had quickly tagged as the important site after they had transitioned to this realm. Checking in on the advance to the temple, Zephyr found it had stalled. Not far from the strange pentagonal walls. Withering fire was coming from the temple, shredding any squads of Uroks that tried to make it through the wide clearings surrounding it. Even a few lone Phoenix warriors had managed to get themselves pinned down under intense attack. Something about this place was different. Perhaps it was held by more elite guards. Zephyr growled in his frustration before going back to work. These savages could not be allowed to slow his plan. 10 squads of Phoenix warriors advanced on the strange temple, merging their psionic shielding into an impenetrable wall as they marched on the temple in a tight phalanx. Red bolts of energy flashed and skittered off the brilliant glow of the shield, and large kinetic projectiles were sent ricocheting off, often back towards the shooters. It took more time than he would have liked to pull together such a large force. Zephyr had to admit that he was surprised by the tenacity of the savages guarding their temple, but it was of little matter now. Once the compound fell to the assault, the rest of the campaign to bring this realm to heel would be simple. Zephyr had nearly flicked away to keep tabs on a different battle unfolding when he saw it. A titan of steel was rising up out of the temple, the enormous figure towering over even the impressive walls of the Pentagon compound. Towering over the impressive walls of the Pentagon compound. Enormous plates of metal and strange lights adorned the figure. Had the savages brought out some hideous idol to try and scare his troops? Zephyr started to send orders for his troops to advance faster on the temple when he was cut off by the loudest sound he'd ever heard.
Liberty Prime online. All systems nominal. Weapons hot. Mission: the destruction of any and all communists.
The horrific sound was nearly deafening to Zephyr, even through the viewing portals. He saw his troops He could see his troops cowering and grabbing at their ears under the audio assault. They had acquired some knowledge of the language of this realm, but still Zephyr couldn't pull any meaning from the horrible noise coming from the Titan.
Good afternoon, Peter. Welcome. Hopefully it's entertaining as well as fascinating. But I'll take fascinating rather than shit.
Then he watched as the Titan stepped over the curtain wall. Then he watched as the Titan stepped over the curtain wall of the temple like a man clearing a log, its massive weight shaking the ground as it walked onto the battlefield, tossing many of phalanxes to the ground. Tossing many of the phalanxes to the ground.
America will never fall to communist invasion.
This second blast of weaponized sound was followed by a horrific lance of brilliant blue energy from the head of the Titan. The colossal beam swept through the phalanx of Phoenix warriors, bursting their shields like a soap bubble in the midday sun. Those the beam touched were simply gone, erased from existence. The rest were less lucky. Hundreds of Imperium's most elite warriors, trained for 1,000 years, lay screaming, their flesh melting onto their armor as a terrible weapon shattered their ranks.
Tactical assessment, Red Chinese victory impossible.
The horror starred.
Phoenix. Phalanx of Phoenix warriors. Did I say phalanx of phalanx warriors?
He's screaming.
The rest were less lucky. Those the beam touched. The colossal beam swept through the phalanx of Phoenix warriors.
I said phalanx of Phoenix warriors.
Bursting their shields like a soap bubble in the midday sun. Those the beam touched were simply gone. Those the beam touched were simply...
Oh. Sorry, this is coming through quite loud. Let me just adjust it. Okay, I'll double check now. Just making sure I'm not blowing people's eardrums out with the replay.
The beam touched was simply gone, erased.
Okay. That's coming through decently. Okay.
Bursting their shields like a soap bubble in the midday sun. Those the beam touched were... The colossal beam swept through the phalanx of Phoenix warriors.
Back. Oh, nope.
This second blast of weapon. This second blast of...
Yep, just working my way backwards.
America!
Okay.
Tossing many of the phalanxes to the ground.
There we go.
Tossing many... Tossing many of the phoenixes to the ground. Tossing many of the phoenixes to the ground.
No, okay.
Tossing many of the phoenixes to the ground. Tossing many of the phoenixes to the ground.
Okie dokie. Where are we now?
Possible. Assessment, Red Chinese victory impossible.
There. Cool. The horror started to advance through the lines of injured warriors and the now blood-crazed Uroks that were charging it. But the metal monstrosity simply ignored them, crushing any that got too close underfoot. Behind the Titan, a wave of the savage's temple guards rushed out. They towered, They towered in hulking armor that mimicked their metal god. Their assault shredded waves of infantry trying to assault the Titan with blasts of rippling red energy. "Embrace democracy, or you will be eradicated." Zephyr could no longer hear himself think through the roar of the terror before him. No more could he look away as it tore apart his army and strode towards his fortress.
Get us out of here,
he shrieked as the Archon...
Get us out of here,
he shrieked at the Archon.
Get us out of here.
He shrieked at his Archons as they stood around the command room, just as stunned as him. What had they unleashed? The robotic assault continued as the Titan tore through the rubble, shattering any groups of soldiers with blasts of its blue energy and roaring its terrible speech. "Communist detected on American soil, lethal force engaged." The transport spells were charging, but much too slow. There seemed to be no stopping the monster before him. Zephyr heard himself whine as the towering guards broke through into the small clearing surrounding his fortress. Would its shielding be enough to stop it? "Obstruction detected. Composition titanium alloy supplemented with photonic resonance barrier. Probably of mission hindrance 0%. The machine simply reached into the fortress's void shielding and pried it apart like plywood. It pulled a strange sphere from its back before throwing it directly at Zephyr's command room. Zephyr started screaming. "Communism is the very definition of failure." End of story.
Water. Hydration. Always healthy.
Suppose if you're into that sort of thing, Liberty Prime is your waifu.
Set sail on a ship, to the stars we shall roam, through the vastness of space, no place like our home. Hoist the sails high.
Story number 2. Penal Colony, written by Vincia Ort Maria. That's true, Marcus, that's true. Surveyor's personal log, transcribed from dictaphone recordings and submitted for consideration to the United Galactic Federation Council, an addendum to official report. An addendum to the official report. The planet designated DW-953 is a penal colony. How else do you account for the presence of a sentient species on a death world? The gravity alone would crush 70% of known species. The planet designated
The planet designated DW-953 is a penal colony. How else do you account for the presence of a sentient species on a death world? The gravity alone would crush 70% of known sentient species as soon as they've deactivated their ship's inertial dampness, and would cripple or severely impair and would cripple or severely impair the other 30%. Not to mention the rampant tectonic and volcanic activity, the poisonous toxins, the deadly predators, or the fact that the planet is so tilted on its axis that nearly the entire habitable surface of the planet vacillates.
We are Space Australia. There is actually a story called Earth is Space Australia.
On its axis, that nearly the entire habitable surface of the planet vacillates. Wildly between temperature extremes over the course of a single standard cycle. And all of that is secondary to the fact that ancestor forsaken rock is blasted with near-lethal levels of radiation. Blasted with near lethal levels of solar radiation. From a yellow sun, no less. No sentient species could possibly have evolved under those terrestrial conditions, let alone beneath the scorching glare of an unshielded fusion reactor like the system's star. That was the analysis of the original survey team sent from the Council of the United Galactic Federation. Further analysis of culture and technological artifacts conducted by our team has confirmed the original speculation. The entire prison seems to be run by a collection of gangs, whose power and prominence within the prison population is directly correlated to the amount of territory, resources, and population they control. The larger gangs have made attempts at self-regulate, understanding the disadvantages of prolonged conflict. Major clashes appear to be genocidal in nature, waged with the intent of subsuming or utterly destroying an enemy in his entirety. The attempt to self-regulate has thus far been hampered by the violent tendencies of the deviant individuals sentenced to life in this penal world. Minor scuffles between rival gangs are a constant occurrence and fairly accepted by the majority of inmates. These conflicts are waged with a disregard for the habitability of the planet itself, in some cases leaving swaths of otherwise habitable territory completely barren of sentient life. It is when looking at this recreational activities of the inmates that we may get a glimpse of the offenses for which they were exiled from their native civilization, as their pursuits are nearly all violent in one form or another. There is a particularly popular spectacle of gladiatorial nature in which participants don armor to simulate small-scale battles, complete with unarmed combat over the possession of an object that appears to be the inflated bladder of an animal. There are varying forms of this type of gladiatorial contest, each with its own set of rules.
Sorry, itchy eye.
There are varying forms of this type of gladiatorial contest, each with its set of rules. Both with and without varying levels of weaponry and armament permitted. Another particularly confusing and exceptionally violent form of contest takes place on a field of ice, with the participants wielding clubs, while balancing on blades strapped to the ends of their legs. These are just a few of the most salient examples, enumerating all forms of recreational violence pursued by these inmates, even in passing, would take hours. Suffice it to say that they are many and varied and disturbing. Technologically, the denizens of this prisoned world show a desperate desire to escape the harsh conditions of their confinement. Implements gathered by UGF surveying team show no evidence of FTL technology or anti-gravity capability. Instead, the inmates have, repeatedly, bolted cockpits on top of several tons of highly unstable chemical accelerants and ignited their entire contraption. Most shockingly, they managed this successfully more than once. Naturally, Naturally, there have been predictable consequences, yet the remainder of the inmates appear to be resolute in their chosen course. This action merely proves how desperate these prisoners are to escape their confinement. The manufacturing process utilized by these societies shows a disregard of the ecosystem of this prison world. This may be taken as evidence that the inmates wish to leave the planet, even at the cost of destroying their prison behind them. Given the conditions of such a hostile world, one can hardly blame them.
Something's tickling my nose. Maybe my eyebrow? Very, very annoying. Now, I've got smudge glasses. Oop. It's like a hair that's just tickling the side of my nose. Very, very annoying.
In them. Despite the mountain of circumstantial evidence compiled both here and enumerated more fully in the official report, I must confess to a nagging doubt. We, as of yet, have found doubt. We, as of yet, found no evidence of outer system monitoring of the prison. My colleagues have advanced the theory that the civilization responsible for establishing this penal world may have trusted to the world's high gravity and the inmates' lack of technological prowess to keep the prisoners bound to their hell rock in perpetuity. This is a reasonable theory. However, I can't help but feel that there seems a short-sighted course of action for a civilization capable of colonizing worlds outside of its native star system. Also, there is the matter of the parent civilization. No evidence of a FTL-capable civilization colonizing this arm of the galaxy has yet been found. It is true that there remain large swaths of territory in this region of the galactic halo still to be mapped. True that it is true that there remain large swaths of territory in this region of the galactic halo still to be mapped, but inroads are being made daily, and still no evidence has appeared. Not recording correctly. It is, and still no evidence has appeared. Officially, the surveying team has advanced the single cohesive theory, replete with evidence that DW-953 is a penal world, in all of its official reports. There is, however, another possibility that has remained unspoken since the beginning of our investigation. It is a possibility so horrifying in its implications that we are loath to even speak it aloud amongst ourselves. It is possible that there is no parent civilization, that the species we have encountered on the planet designated DW-953, locally known as Earth, evolved to sentience on the most hostile planet yet bound to support life. And that species, for whom violence is a form of leisure, who rose to dominance in the deadliest environment yet encountered by the UGF, is coming.
This is, of course, mere speculation, which, as the leader of the expedition, I am duty-bound to present to the UGF Council. It's strange credulity to believe that any species could have evolved to sentience under such harsh conditions, and is outright laughable to believe that any sentient species could demonstrate such wanton violence towards other members of the same species, or such flagrant disregard for their homeworld. I expect the I expect the expeditionary team to contact the parent civilization of DW-953 Prison World any day now. Earth is a penal colony, right? End of story. Boop-doo. Yes. It was a very popular trope for a while, that Earth was Space Australia. I say very popular, it was just a thing that happened for a while. Seriously got a case of the itches today. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read Top. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called... Could be a dander in the air. I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those days. This particular... where the itches are just everywhere. This particular story is called 14 Beings Left, One State Back, written by Alt Cypher. Professor, I don't understand this reading assignment, Laura said. Professor Vey took his reading glasses off and turned to her. Which part of it? Well, all of it, I guess. No, that's not right. Why are we reading this? You're an anthropology professor, and you're not... Why are we reading this? You're an anthropology professor, and you've got us reading a physics textbook, Laura said. She sat in the one uncluttered chair in the professor's office. Stacks of papers climbed towards the ceiling and made the room feel stuffy. Yes, I am an anthropology professor, and yes, that is a physics textbook. Do you know what my specialty is, Laura? Xenoanthropology, she said. Close enough. What so? So, what does xenoanthropology mean? Laura paused for a moment, wary of the rhetorical trap. The study of ancient alien civilizations? Very good. How many ancient alien civilizations have we found? There are 14 known alien civilizations, and some theories estimate up to several thousand more, Laura said. Correct. 14 known, maybe many more unknown. Now tell me, what is the Fermi paradox? The Fermi paradox is the apparent contradiction between the highly The Fermi paradox is the apparent contradiction between the highly probable estimates of other intelligent life in the universe and the apparent lack of any other civilizations. But Professor, the Fermi paradox is an answer. They're all dead, Laura said. Yes. First, well done on reciting the textbook definition of the Fermi paradox. We'll get to the other part in a moment. But can you explain to me the Fermi paradox in your own words, in plain English? Well, Laura said, space is really, really big.
There are billions of stars and 10 times as many planets. Everywhere we look, we should see some kind of evidence of intelligent life. Radio signals or ships or something, Laura said.
Not bad. That is a more or less correct statement, really. That is a more or less correct restatement. Now to go back to your earlier statement. They're all dead. Explain that to me, please.
There's no evidence of intelligent life because there isn't any left. There have been many other civilizations, but they're all died, Laura said.
Have you studied any of those aliens? Have you studied any of those aliens? Have you studied any of...
Seriously?
Have you studied any of... Any?
It's a weird quirk with this microphone that it does that sometimes.
Have you studied any of...
Makes a clicking sort of sound on some A's.
Have you studied any of those alien civilizations?
The professor asked.
Sure, in grade school, up through high school. Goldman's aliens, the Chini, the Tala, Laura said.
Then what did you learn about them?
Well, they're all really different. Goldmans were a primarily aquatic species that had technology based on hydraulics. The Tala were strict carnivores who never developed farming from what we can tell.
All true, but I was thinking about what things are common amongst all of them. What trait or traits do all 14 known species... 14 known alien species share?
Well, Laura said, they're all dead, I guess.
True. Go on,
the professor said. They're all relatively close to us, within the galaxy. They're all relatively close to us, within this galaxy and on this side of it.
Each species has only been found... Also true. Let me ask this. How many worlds did we discover each of them on?
Each species has only been found on one world, Laura said.
There it is. No known alien species has ever been found off their home world. Now, let me ask you this. How many habitable planets are there in the galaxy?
Laura stopped to think. I don't know. Millions? Billions?
Fair enough. The last reliable estimate I saw had the number of Earth-like planets at a minimum of 50 million, with a possibility of up to 1 billion. That's a lot of planets that can support our brand of life and the lives of most of the known aliens. One more question. How many colonies do we have?
6 or 7, I think, Laura said.
They just founded number 9 last week. But either way, we have many more than 0. So why? Why do humans have multiple off-world colonies, and there are 14 other species that have none? That, in fact, died on their home worlds, the professor said.
I don't know,
Laura.
I don't know,
Laura said. That book you brought to ask about, it's a basic physics textbook. There are only a couple chapters I would assign you to read. Relativity being the main one. Can you guess why?
Relativity has to do with time changing as you go faster, right?
It does. But the reason I'm assigning that book is to give you all a very definite sense of scale, the professor said. In Einstein's realm, nothing can ever go faster than the speed of light. Now, that's a pretty high speed limit, but it is a limit. At the speed of light, how long would it take to get to the nearest extrasolar star?
4 years, right?
A little over that, but yes. Now, what about the next star out?
I don't know,
Laura said. That's fine, it's years. And so on and so on. To cross from one side of our galaxy to another would take how long at the speed of light?
I don't.
About 100,000 years, the professor said. As fast as light is, it still takes 100,000 years to cross the Milky Way. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, only evolved 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. Crossing the galaxy is not measured in a person's lifetime. It's measured in a species' lifetime. It's massive. And that's just one galaxy. There are billions of galaxies out there. The next closest galaxy would take about 2.5 million years to reach at the speed of light. At light speed. Space is mind-numbingly vast.
So that's why we need to read a physics book for an anthropology course.
We're getting there. Okay, so if you're stuck at relativistic speeds or slower, and you look around and see just how frighteningly big an empty space is, what is your first reaction?
To feel very, very small?
Laura said. Very, very small, but suppose some clever monkey on an unremarkable world figures out that there is a way to cheat the system. Suppose these clever monkeys use this cheat to develop fantastical ships that sail through space, completely ignoring relativity.
I'd feel, not so small.
Hope, Miss Elder. Hope. Those aliens looked out at the universe and saw all that empty, lonely space, and they turned back. Their civilizations collapsed. It's all just too much. Their civilizations collapsed because it's all just too much. They gave up hope. So their societies deteriorated and collapsed. We know them only by their ruins and their solitary homeworlds. You are reading a physics book to understand that which you study: despondency, futility, the loss of hope.
But that didn't happen to us,
Laura said. No, it didn't. We seem to be the exception to the rule. When the other civilization stared out into the void. When the other civilization stared into the void, they blinked. We did not. We took it as a challenge. We created the box drive. We went out into the void screaming. We went out into the void screaming out defiance with every... We went out into the void screaming out defiance with every faster-than-light ship we built. For a human to understand what those aliens went through may never be possible. But we can glimpse it. I've assigned that book so that we can have a basis of understanding. I've assigned that book so that we can have a basis of understanding those other civilizations. Our hope, how continued efforts in the face of overwhelming odds are what separates us from those aliens, and it is exactly that which we must study. End of story.
Oh, almost forgot to update. Huh? 5 people watching on X. Hello, X people. Greetings, greetings. I don't even know if there's a chat on X. I assume there is. True. Oh. X-people.
We are the X-Men.
Yeah, what are we doing? 271-2. 271-2-
The God Emperor.
Alrighty. Story number next. Story number 2. Story number 2. The God Emperor. Written by Dicemonger. The Grand God Emperor Zorzaxax, 253rd of his line, Master of the Void, Beloved of Eternity, sat on the Golden Throne, waiting. Actually, he was ex-Grand God Emperor, Master of his line, ex-Master of the Void, maybe not so as beloved as he thought by eternity, all because of those damned humans. It had been routine. It hadn't even been brought to his attention when the perimeter fleets moved to embrace another race into the Empire. Well, embrace, conquer, same thing. Same thing. Same thing. The humans had resisted, and then they struck back. And the humans didn't fight honorably. They had intimidated fleets into surrender without a single shot fired. They had incited the client races into rebellion against the Empire. They hacked the military networks and subverted the AIs. And rather than meet the Grand Forces in honorable battle, they destroyed them with orbital bombardment. The Empire was 1,000,000 years old. Its armies had countless victories on their rolls. Its institutions had outlived even the memory of their founding. Despite the best efforts of the archivists, probably more was forgotten of its history than was remembered. The Empire had a good... The Empire had stood for 1,000,000 years, and the humans destroyed it in 4. 4 years ago, the humans had started their assault on the Empire, and 6 days ago, they and their allies had destroyed the Imperial Home Fleet. The plasma-scorched, burning hulks of the fleet could still be vaguely seen in the night sky. The diffuse glow in the direction of the warm... They diffuse glow in the direction of the Wormgate. A diffuse glow in the direction of the Wormgate, as large as an outstretched pincer? Ostrich. A diffuse glow in the direction of the Wormgate, as large as an outstretched pincer. After that final loss, Zerzax. This is all. Zorzax. After that, apparently I'm a mosquito. Final loss. After that final loss, Zorzax had surrendered. Knowing the humans' propensity for orbital bombardment, he had to. To save the historical palaces and archives of the home world, and, entirely coincidentally of course, his own exoskeleton, he had surrendered with dignity and ordered his people to do the same. That was 6 days ago. 6 days. And he had yet to receive an envoy or even a reply from the humans. He knew they had landed. He knew they had seized the military installations and the administrative complexes. He had received regular updates until the point where they one by one stopped reporting back. The last he had heard from outside the palace was 4 days ago. And still no envoy. It was both subtly terrifying and utterly infuriating. Never, since his rise to the throne, never had he been left waiting like this. His ruminations were disturbed as one of his personal guards entered the throne room, carefully keeping his gaze on the floor away from his royal presence. "Beloved God Emperor, an envoy from the humans has arrived." The guard hesitated. His gaze flickered towards, but not quite reaching, Zozaxix. "I think." Zozaxix. Zolzax. Zaz.
Zolzizaz instinctively snarled. He thought, what was that supposed to mean? But as a magnanimous ruler, he quickly suppressed the anger. At this moment, the rumblings of lesser cause were beneath his notice. He airily waved a pincer at the guard. Send them in. The guard bowed low and quickly disappeared. A minute later, the human entered. Zolzekzax felt the snow pulling again. The human had no entourage, and his clothing was drab. A grey coat, grey leg coverings, and what looked like a piece of cloth around his neck. Under one arm he had what looked like a head covering, and Yes, Emperor Mosquito. Under one arm he had what looked like a head covering, and under the other some kind of square letter case. Under the other some kind of square leather case. He hardly looked like an envoy worthy of an imperial meeting. Still, the human approached, ignoring all the customary bowing and scraping of court etiquette. This was probably fair. The humans did come as conquerors, after all. The human continued approaching, completely ignoring the line on the floor which indicated the closest that a beloved of eternity could be approached. This irked Zolzekzax. He wasn't used to being approached so closely by outsiders. But they were his conquerors, he reminded himself. The human approached almost to the throne, and Zolzekzax opened his mouth to speak, but the human spoke first. Are you Zolzekzax? A bit of a snarl showed on Zolzekzax's face. Of course he was Zolzekzax. Of course he was Zolzekzax. What game was the human playing? Still he replied, Yes, I am Zolzekzax. 205,000. 2,500 of my line. The human pulled some papers from his leather case. Good. My name is Frank. I'm here to enter you into the system. First off, as a citizen of the Terran Federation, you are eligible for universal income as long as you don't opt out. What? Zolzekzax replied flatly. This is not at all how he had expected. This was not at all going how he had expected. Universal income. It is the opinion of the Federation that every member should have a substantial income. It is the opinion of the Federation that every member should have a sustainable income, even if they can't find work or desire to enter non-paying callings. Speaking of work, if the change in administration means that you have lost your previous job, it is also within my responsibility to help you find a new job, should you so desire. Should you desire it. This time Zolzekzax did audibly snarl, I am the God Emperor. I have ruled 1,000 worlds for 140 years. I will not. The human interrupted him. This was the first time in the same 140 years that anyone had interrupted him. Ah, yes, sir. How did I miss that? He tapped his papers. It says so right here. Well, with that kind of resume, I see two different tracks. You could either enter the administrative track with your credentials, planetary governor. With your credentials, planetary governor might be an immediate option. Maybe even sector administrator. He leaned in closer and confided with a wink. Given the recent events, we are kind of running short on administrative personnel. He straightened up again and continued. Alternatively, you could go into entertainment, write a biography, go on a tour and taking about everywhere. Go on a tour talking about your life and experiences. I'm sure you could gain success here. Not every day an ousted emperor drops by to reveal his experiences. As he jotted down a few notes, he said, Though,
If it were me, I would take the administrative track. There's nothing like helping people, right?
Zaxxus's mind was roiling. This was all happening too fast. He was a god emperor. There was no way that he would be reduced to...
The human flipped to a new piece of paper and frowned. Oh, right. Technically, the palace is owned by the government. I believe it is in the process of being designated as a heritage site. So we'll need to find you some public housing until you can find your own place to live. End of story. Pew. 3 videos down, 3 videos to go. I got him for. Pew. Two 272-1. Why are you? Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales. Greetings, ladies. Stop recording. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called "Why Are You All So Fearless?" Why are you all fearless? Written of Why are you all fearless? Written by Apophis Pegasus. Why? A simple answer to that, we're not. Why? Simple answer to that, we're not. Well, the overwhelming majority of us are not. Fearlessness is for sociopaths, idiots, and sociopathic idiots. Most of us get scared all the time. Yes, we do conduct orbital combatant insertions, but to be fair, our ablative shield tech is second to none. Well, yeah, but High-Keyan pirates are, well, pirates. It makes perfect sense to them. Sure, they've got hive minds, but that's more creepy than anything. Well, that's just for fun. Besides, most of us are able to process out the stuff now. The great thanks to our livers. The great thanks of our livers. Yeah, but we do fear. Our entire lives are spent in... All right. Come and sit down, or slither down. I don't know what the correct terminology is. I'll let you in on a little secret. Humans are scaredy cats. We are the most fearful sapiens you'll probably ever encounter in this galaxy. We just know how to deal with it. Let me just finish. Every species that we encounter so far hasn't been uplifted or artificially created. Fair enough, Postmatic. Fair enough. We just... encounter in this galaxy. We just know how to deal with it. Let me just finish. Just let me finish. Every species that we encounter so far that hasn't been uplifted or artificially created, you know what all of them have in common? Besides sentience. they're all at the top of the food chain in their planets. All of them. They eat whatever and whoever the hell they want, and nobody can tell them otherwise. Why do you think almost all of them have fangs or claws or natural camo? Apex predators, the lot of them. The only things that regularly kill apex are starvation, sickness, and other apex. And they had a long line of top doggery to draw on. Humans are the exception. We didn't start out like that. Oh sure, the last million years or so, we were the top dog. But before then, the genus Homo was kind of meh in the food chain department. Not too high, not too low, just cruising. Eat, but sometimes get eaten. And that was our greatest advantage. That taught us the value of terror. Every bump in the night, every lunge of a predator, every sniffle from that one dude who'd been out in the rain too long sent us running for the hills. For eons, humans were vulnerable, hairless little morsels that most predators could run down in seconds, and bacteria and viruses could wipe out in a day or weeks. And it continued like this, on and on and on, until we just got tired of it. Tired of fear being in the driver's seat. We got tired of running. We got tired of waiting for something or someone to come along and kill us or maim us. We took our fear, and we used it. We took all the good things fear gave us, hyperfocus, attention to detail, that fighty part, that good old fight and flight response, and we used them. We used them to become the thing that goes bump in the night. We used them to hunt down anything that would hurt us. We wiped some organisms out of existence for that. We clawed and maimed and hunted and eradicated to our ascendants. We Klingon promoted ourselves the whale. We Klingon promoted our way up the food chain. Klingon is you know what? I'll just end you Star Trek after this. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah. So, we get to the top of the food chain, and it's all good for the first 10, 11 millennia or so. Then you guys showed up. No, not your species specifically. I mean, aliens. First contact. We're just sitting pretty, resting on our laurels, when the galactic neighborhood came around to do a meet and greet. And there we were, sitting in our proverbial boxes, ketchup stains in our second-day-old t-shirt. Sitting in our proverbial boxes, ketchup stains on our 2-day-old shirt, not in any condition to take guests. And more importantly, finding ourselves at the bottom of the food chain again. The very bottom. See, unlike what some speculators and movie directors and geeky weirdos on Reddit thought might happen, we weren't strong. We weren't smart. We weren't old or technologically advanced. We weren't even wise. We were children who had accidentally walked into the big boys' playground. A young species of light worlders in a very, very old galaxy. So our old friend Fear came barging to the front, just reaching for the wheel. A lot of us wanted to sequester ourselves, just pretend like none of this existed. Just got back home and pretend that we were still top dog, the kings of our now very small castle. But we weren't, and basing our civilization on a blatant lie gets you nowhere. So we sought out, terrified the whole way. We learned from those willing to teach us. We ran from those willing to harm us. We started colonies, lost colonies, started them again, scared as a kitten the whole way. And the whole way, we learned something. Aliens don't like risk. I mean, aliens really don't like risk. You make accountants and lawyers look like Leroy Jenkins. I'll explain that after too, don't worry. You guys will run a simulation on everything before you send something to be produced. New technologies sometimes take you centuries to develop and millennia to replace. All because you don't like it when something goes wrong. You want 100% certainty. Humans just don't have that. We figure something's going to go wrong somehow. Let's find out what. So we started exploring and experimenting, and everything went wrong at one point or another. Ships' drives blew, stargates imploded, AI covered planets with paperclips, enhancement treatments went haywire. Terraforming tech made wastelands, space habitats drifted too close to the sun. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And that's life. That's what we let us... That's what let us advance so fast. We just took a chance. You can't outrun... You can't run from fears, dude. Fears chase you. They'll chase you until you can't run anymore, or they pop up when you think you're safe and happy and mess your day, your week, or your life up. Best you can do is use that fear. Turn it into the good kind of fear. Bad fear is worse than useless. Bad fear paralyzes you. Bad fear holds you down while you burn from the infernal maelstrom inside. Good fear takes that fire and turns it into a rocket. Good fear keeps you on edge, lets you land on target, and pulls solutions out of your ass that you never thought of. That's why Wait, what was the question again? Right, we're not fearless. Every time a ship engages its drive, every human heart on board clenches up for a second. Every time a stargate opens, every human traveler has a bead of sweat coming down their face. Hell, every time I make an orbital insertion, I'm damn near shitting my pants. All of us are. Why do we smile so much? I told you. We're terrified. Terror is what makes all of this so much damn fun. End of story.
Yeah, I mean, these things happen. Some of the formats are better written than narrated, like this particular one. There's a few writers who did this for a while, or a couple stories. The one-sided conversation. Sometimes it can be funny. And good, but, you know. Suppose that's the same with anything. Two, 1, 2, 2. Story number 2. There must be some misunderstanding. There is the punishment. There must be some misunderstanding. This is the punishment. There must be... Okay. I think it's the one you're thinking of. Possibly, but the title is just very difficult to read. There must be some misunderstanding. This is the punishment. But I love it here, sir. We have a problem. The subject either doesn't understand words or is immune to our inhumane torture methods. Written by AC 1308. Blue Jazz retracted his eye stalks and used his major and minor sub-manipulators to rub at the developing stress crease in his facial integument. Facial integument.
Please, if it will not work. Please, if it will not kill you, repeat your description of the insurmountable crisis at hand.
His unnamed underling
one of the 3 currently being inflicted on him, winced back under the unrelenting fury of his subtle sarcasm. "It is the human," it bleated, keeping all undertones, overtones, and infrasonics out of its trembling voiced utterances. Infrasonics out of its trembling vocal utterances. "It is refusing to acknowledge the punishment." Blue Jazz's left eye stalk popped out of hiding, followed by his right, a blatant sign of his irritated disbelief.
Correct me if I'm mistaken. Don't even think about it. But punishment is to be endured, screaming or otherwise, not given as a choice to be acknowledged. You gormless idiot. This is not hyperspace study, though in your case it might as well be.
"I have tried," whined the underling, in a most unbecoming fashion. "But no matter how many extra punishments I layer on that ugly bipedal being, it refuses to beg for sweet release or mercy. In fact, it infuriatingly pretends to enjoy them."
"Slither with me," commanded Blue Jazz. "I shall examine this irritating, obstinate human and formulate a plan of undoubtedly infallible action."
He plopped off his comfortable rest and set forth into the depths of the multi-species prison of which he was the Supreme High Director.
"Remind me, what crime has this assuredly guilty as sin being been convicted of?"
"Good afternoon, Rev. Hope you're doing well." Or as well as can be. It encountered a member of our most high corporate overlord caste and used its usually strong manipulator arm to strike him in the dorsal region, at the same time uttering the unspeakably insulting phrase, "Sup, dude?" The underling cringed back as it repeated the phrase. Those 2 syllables had been known to get beings exiled from the system for life.
"The force of this aggressively assaulting blow caused the official to
The force of this aggressively assaulting blow caused the official to regurgitate his last meal. It all made sense now. Such an offense, separating a member of the corporate overlord caste from his food, was among the most heinous known to his kind.
Why was it not immediately executed?
On-site security attempted to do this, the underling admitted, but their salt sprayers must have been faulty, proved ineffective, so the being was taken into custody and placed under punishment as mandated by the most authoritative, infallible information we have.
"And you say that it is not working?"
They slithered into the capture space, where the guards determined the eye stalk count. Where the guards determined by eye stalk count that they were not escaped prisoners in disguise, then were let through. No, despite the fact that it should be. The underling twisted its eye stalks in frustration. "As mandated, we are forcing it to spend part of its waking cycle semi-submerged in dihydrogen monoxide, and another part being exposed to ultraviolet radiation of an intensity that would surely cook you alive, or that would surely cook you or I alive. For foodstuffs, it is being forced to subsist on more dihydrogen monoxide, as well as liquids containing caffeine and others containing ethanol. There is also a particularly unpleasant and undoubtedly deadly type of food called pizza, and another called burgers. These have meat-based proteins on them." Doing as well as can be, Rev. Doing as well as can be. Putting one foot in front of the other. It's the best you can always do. Blue Jazz shuddered, a process which took some time to complete. His eye stalks curled in on themselves. That sounded like a truly horrific punishment.
"And it is pretending, masquerading, enjoying of this. And it is pretending, masquerading, enjoyment of this. It must surely possess an unusual, unnatural threshold of pain." A thought struck him. "Have you attempted to use salt, true torture, in these punishments?"
"There is already salt involved," wailed the underling. "There is salt dissolved into the dihydrogen monoxide. The ethanol sometimes comes with salt. The pizza and burgers already have salt on them."
"Well, that seems to be all-encompassing and comprehensive." That seems to be all-encompassing comprehensive,"
mused Blue Jazz.
He stretched his eye stalks to peer through the UV-shielded window at the human. Clad in a scrap of cloth above the bifurcation of its body, it seemed to be reclining on a rack designed to expose... It seemed to be reclining on a rack designed to expose it to the soft yellow-white light from above, no doubt rich in UV radiation. Beneath the rack was a surface composed of silicoid grains, sloping down to a large expanse of deadly salt-infused dihydrogen monoxide. How the human could bring itself to submerge itself in that stuff, he could not comprehend. Its survival in such a case was even more remarkable. The human turned its head towards the window, while its eyes were covered in dark lenses, no doubt to conceal its suffering. It drew back its lips and exposed its sharp white predator teeth in a threat display. A glass vessel containing what was no doubt a highly deadly concentration of ethanol was raised in one manipulator before the human forced itself to imbibe some. Blue Jazz had seen enough. He retreated from the window. "What was that unsettling aggressive gesture?" he asked once they were at a safe distance from the door. "I suspect that it was intended to convey a threat to pour the ethanol over you, then rend you with its teeth," suggested the underling, looking and sounding revolted. "I agree wholeheartedly, concur. Blue Jazz flexed his eye stalks in determined fashion. "What is the next on the punishment scale?" "The human is a male of the species," noted the underling. "At this stage in its development, it wants nothing to do with females. We'll pay females of its species to wear minimal covering and associate closely with it. Perhaps then we can break its will." This made sense. Blue Jazz had been through such a stage himself. He was curious, however. "Where are you receiving, attaining, gaining this revelation awareness knowledge from?" "Oh," said the underling, When I contacted the human ambassador, I asked him for how its species could be made to suffer. It supplied a very detailed list." Blue Jazz considered this. The best way to torture a member of a species was to ask another member, after all. "Well done, even if it is hardly working as yet," he replied. "Carry on," he set out back towards his office. Richard. I'm glad it's doing a bit better, Rev. Always sucks when you have radiating pain, regardless of where it is and where it goes. Richard Holt finished the last of his Mai Tai, took off his sunglasses, and got up from the folding recliner. Taking a few long strides, he dove, not dived. Taking a few long strides, he dove into the water, which was pleasantly cool. The ambassador had assured him that they were working hard to spring him from the prison and get him back to Earth. As far as he was concerned, they could take their time. End of story. Doop doop doop. One nine eight six. Yeah, I do. I haven't found a place that does nice patches.
Okay, definitely not reading this second, well, 1 and 2. It's 5531. That's a lot. That puts it at, I don't know, an hour. That's not happening. Just move that down there. And put that there. Although this hat has a Velcro thing on the top. I've never seen that before. Not sure what it's for. Maybe it's for a beer can. Yeah, pom-pom. But why would you put a patch on the top? I'm not sure why you... I mean, there's one on the back. There's one on the front for patches, but I'm not sure about the one on the top. Maybe it's for a propeller. Name tag. It's tiny. Where you can see it. On the tippity top. That's 1 inch by 1 inch, or 1 inch squared, roughly. Doesn't seem like you could stick anything useful there. Okay. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet. Where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular... Hello? Okay, we're connected again. I'm sure I could research it, just haven't gotten around to it, Rev. Where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Parasites, written by Weirdo5255. Staring at the creatures for a moment, Mary sighed and folded her hands behind her back. Just kill me. Ah, that makes sense. Perfect sense. The creatures in the room looked at one another and then back at Mary. What? Asked the unnaturally tall and impeccably dressed creature in the center of the dark room. Mary glared back at it. I give up. How the hell are you things real? For feck's sakes. Stalking towards the closest of the creatures, one that looked like it was a sidekick fecker number 2. One that looked like it was sidekick fecker number 2. To the tall one, Mary stared it in the eyes. Fecker number 2 leaned back slightly. Red eyes wide, it took a small step back. Raising a hand, Mary stabbed a finger into the thing's mouth. Fecking hell, kill me, groaned Mary as she glared at the pearly white fangs inside the thing's mouth. Becca number 2 snapped her hand away and frowned. I'm pretty sure I've done this. Give me one moment. I shall check. This is not really spare. Yes, I did it 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Yeah, it should be a reach boss. Just in the wrong area. Built-in sound effects. Semi-Loki. Check. Seed of Revenge. There's also a reach boss. Why are these popping up here? Cool. Put that there. And do this, I think. I did why we fearless. I painted it the wrong colored it the wrong color. So we did those today. Okay, let's try this again. Two 796 2796 dash punching. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Punching Above Weight, written by G.I. Joe Vibing. Krishmila 14 Station, Vectron System. Opening airlock in 3, 2, 1. Move, move, move! The airlock doors quickly slid out of the way, exposing the station corridor to Sergeant Fernandez's view. He threw a small wad of paper, watching its trajectory carefully to assess the gravitational situation. It landed slightly faster than it would have back on Earth, meaning that the crew had set it to a gravity more appropriate to the Hectaeans. Sergeant Fernandez pushed forward, his spacesuit boots pressing on the gravity plating. He felt the slight extra tug pulling him down, but he rapidly got used to it, having trained in it before now. Fernandez swept the corridor with his rifle, a modified German G-11 produced for the United Nations Orbital Command. Its trigger guard had been removed, so that a spacesuit's gloves could actually use the weapon, and the stock reshaped so that it wasn't as bulky. Fernandez kept moving, one foot after the other, always keeping one on the ground, until he felt his left foot being actively repulsed, the gravity plating there working to push him upwards. With a simple wiggling of his toes, the magnets in his shoes were activated, securing his right leg to the floor while he struggled to force his left leg down. "Reverse gravity belt," Fernandez reported via his radio, finally managing his left foot down against the pressure, where it locked into place. The next man in the line, Corporal Bethia, would mark the belt with tape like it was a minefield, passing the warning on to all orbital infantry who would be following up. Either the crew lacked the capacity to flip the gravity back and forth rapidly, or they weren't doing it yet. Fernandez wiggled his right toes, a signal to temporarily deactivate the magnets for his next step. This time, Far more prepared, he launched the foot forwards, slamming it down as fast as possible, the magnets automatically reactivating upon contact. Was the toe wiggling system a little too complex mechanically and took a while to learn? Yes. But in times like this, Fernandez was more than thankful for something like it. He threw another wad of paper from his pocket, finding it reversed gravity zone that continued for a while. Finding the reverse gravity zone to continue for quite a while. All units Hecatane comms are disabled. They have been unable to broadcast a message. We've accessed their comms buffer. They are still in the dark about our identity, Colonel Murray, overall commander of the mission, announced. The identification part was particularly vital. If this operation was traced back to humans, then the war, for all the effort put into it until now, would be over in milliseconds. The Hecatanes simply wiping Earth from existence with missiles traveling faster than the speed of light. The team had therefore used a stolen ship that had inspected this station previously for the Union of Alenia, the Hecatane Stellar Imperium rival, making the assault look like their fault. This wasn't an ordinary situation, you see. It was more akin to a spaceborne nuclear missile submarine, hiding and ready to unleash death at any time. Instead of nuclear weapons, though, it carried those faster-than-light missiles, at least a portion of the total arsenal. The Union worked with the Imperium to check the other wasn't planning the first strike, conducting inspections irregularly to catch crews off guard. Unfortunately for the station, the most recent inspection team had run into human privateering assets, giving its location away and allowing this mission to be planned and conducted. By Fernandez's understanding, humans getting caught in this would be like if North Koreans had been caught trying to steal a nuclear missile sub, back when that sort of thing could have been an issue. If this operation worked, besides its direct consequences, he could lead the Imperium to draw resources away from their ongoing second assault on Earth, refocusing on their old rivals once more as they postured off, or maybe even fought. That was how humanity hoped to survive, after all. Play the galactic giants off against each other, and quietly survive in the middle of it all. Fernandez reached a three-way junction in the corridor, spotting a sliver of movement behind a large desk that blocked the... Spotting a sliver of movement behind a large desk that blocked up the right wood corridor. He needed to go right, leaving the corridor to his front for the other troops to mop up. Fernandez halted at this corner, switching his rifle to his left hand. The gravity still reversed where he stood. He kneeled for accuracy, then took out yet another wad of paper, throwing it towards the deck. It traveled upwards, landing on the ceiling slightly before reaching the desk itself. Fernandez trained his weapon onto that desk, trigger finger ready. 3-round burst mode activated. 3-round burst mode active. There was a pregnant pause. Then the Hecatan head cautiously poked above the desk. 4 eyes, dark blue skin and all, looking upwards, as if he expected the attackers on the ceiling or something. Fernandez pulled the trigger, having adjusted his aim slightly downwards to account for the inverted gravity. 3 rounds, all in quick succession, sped through the air, punching neat little holes into the Hecatane's head. His blood, spurting out of the wounds, flowed downwards, before the lifeless body slumped to the floor, showing the gravity there to be the correct way around. The punch of the recoil, all delivered in one big hit thanks to the rifle's unique burst system, hit Fernandez hard, but he was properly braced. He aimed again, seeing another Hecatane moving towards the colleague, then fired again. The rounds caught the crewman in the shoulder, throwing them off balance just in time for Corporal Bethia to get off the lethal shot to the heart. 2 targets down, with 3 shifts, 3 crew, and 4th emergency shift, that meant 10 left. Suddenly, Fernandez felt gravity shift, returning to putting him back down. It threw him off balance, his legs now encountering 0 resistance. and effectively causing him to drop to the floor. A third Hecatane appeared, firing a plasma pistol at where Fernandez had been standing. Just a sparrow. A third Hecatane appeared, firing a plasma pistol at where Fernandez had been just a second ago, striking the wall. Fernandez fired back, unlocking his boots and charging forwards, at least as fast as he could while always keeping one foot anchored. Plasma fire came down the corridor he just left, the Hecatanes clearly having planned some sort of ambush. Fully automatic fire shot back in response, a dozen guns all laying down rounds. Fernandez bowed forwards, tossing himself over the desk and towards the control room door. Corporal Bethia followed, quickly setting the thermite charge on the door. "Control room door reached, prepared to breach," Fernandez reported in, taking cover. Bethia readying the charge for activation. "Understood. All units confirmed seal status." The gunfire in the corridor slackened, returning to silence. There was a sound of a singular lance. There was a sound of a singular lance sailing through, then a torrent of fire, followed by yet more silence. "Gold team, 1 puncture sealed," Fernandez's team leader responded. There was a reason Fernandez had a roll of tape attached to his suit. Punctures could easily be lethal in this kind of warfare. Half of Gold team advanced up the corridor. The other half congregated near the control room door, preparing yet more charges. Red team, no punctures. Blue team, no punctures. "Confirmed. Begin breaching procedure. All units brace." Fernandez locked his mag boots once more, as all 5 of the thermite charges set to work, carving its way through the door. When the door was sufficiently weakened, a series of small explosive charges detonated, punching 2 clean holes straight through. "Breached." Upon Fernandez's announcement, more explosives were detonated, this time placed by Red Team strategically along the station. The interior was suddenly exposed to the vacuum of space, and the air suddenly began escaping. And the air suddenly began escaping out. And the air supply began escaping out, including from the control center. At the same time, Blue Team cut power from the reactor, disabling the lighting and the gravity plating. Fernandez activated his spacesuit's lights, deactivating his boots, then, with one firm hand, wrested his way through one of the holes left by the charges, into the pitch-black control room. The rush of air against him did its best to force him out of the way, but the other routes out, it was nowhere near concentrated enough. Fernandez entered the room, pushing forcefully against the remnants of the door for propulsion glided. Door for propulsion glided, weightless. Door for propulsion glided, weightless, moved. One crew member, sporting a plasma rifle, was fumbling around, caught in his lights. Fernandez fired, the intense recoil from the 3-round burst arresting his momentum and knocking him slightly off course, while the crewmen he had targeted simply ceased to exist, their body floating away as blood poured out. He looked around, seeing a pair of Hecatanes rushing towards the emergency locker, having abandoned their weapons as they pushed from console to console. Clearly, they were better versed in their drills, but also not a threat. Not yet. Plasma fire came from deeper in the room, and so Fernandez swung himself around, squeezing the trigger before he even had a time to properly see the target. Squeezing the trigger before he even had time to properly see the target, going solely off the visible plasma launch trail. The recoil, now even more misaligned with Fernandez's direction of travel, knocked him on a collision course with a nearby wall. So Fernandez was forced to flip over, bringing his mag boots up and activating them just in time to contact the wall, giving him some firm ground to work with. The emergency lighting came into effect, bathing the control room in red light. Corporal Bethia was barreling straight towards the 2 targets Fernandez had ignored, clearly opting to take them down non-lethally by simply slamming into them.
Of the other two crew members in the room, one had tossed their rifle aside and crossed their arms, the Hecatane symbol for surrender, while another had finished putting an emergency breathing kit and was twirling around, plasma pistol ready. Fernandez didn't hesitate, firing one last burst, shredding the breathing mask and killing the Hecatane instantly. Bethia impacted with one of the two remaining Hecatanes, knocking them over. The other turned, seeing a bulky spacesuited figure heading straight for them, and ducked, then crossed their arms, marking the surrender or killing of every member of the station's crew. But that the work could truly begin. Sergeant Fernandez, like most of his comrades, watched the station fire its payload from the ship that had carried them to it. 48 interstellar faster-than-light missiles, as they were called, 48 interstellar faster-than-light missiles, as they were called, simultaneously ejected from their storage bay, powering up their hyperdrives and disappearing into hyperspace. Each could ruin an unshielded planet, but these weren't aiming at planets. The station let out a single transmission, one that had been trapped inside the communications. The station let out a single transmission, one that had been trapped inside the communication buffer, and released only now. There was not much to it, a description by the crew of the ongoing attack, and that it had been launched from an inspection vessel, one associated with the Union of Alinea. It would arrive at the comms relay before the missiles reached their target, of course, but that wouldn't matter. No warning would be enough. Finally, the station exploded, its power reactor going critical and overloading, reducing it to little more than scattered atoms. Anyone trying to piece together the events of the attack would only have the transmission, and one group would clearly deserve the blame. About a day passed before the missiles hit their targets. First, the Myratov anchorage, a deep space facility that was home to two fleets, one of which was in port and utterly destroyed in the attack. Then the Halkanov, just a light hour away from the Hecatane capital world. Besides the obvious implications of two critical parts of infrastructure being annihilated, the latter's destruction served as an incredibly visible signal that the Imperium was no longer in control of the situation, and became a massive boon to the growing rebellion within its ranks. Ironically, just a few Galactic Standard weeks earlier, the Union of Alinea had thought that they could manipulate humanity, a bunch of primitives as far as they were concerned, to achieve their own strategic goals against the Hecatane Stellar Imperium. It seemed appropriate that their plan would be so thoroughly ruined by those very humans. End of story.
Cheers, Postmedic. Thank you for sticking by. Very much appreciated. Hope you have a great day, evening, sleeps, all of that. Yarg! There be some booty for the treasure trove. Yarg! Always welcome.
Landing on the ceiling slightly before reaching the desk itself. Burst mode active.
Good morning, Anthony. Hope you're doing well. I think that author, he writes a lot of stories in the same universe. They're not necessarily related. They're all pretty much standalone stories. I'm going to step away for a minute. I will leave you with music and chair.
Set sail on a ship To the stars we shall roam, through the vastness of space. No place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
All right, back. Just double checking to see if we haven't done this one as well. Okay, we haven't done that one. And this one? We have done.
It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Okay. We are ready, I think. Just turn down the volume a bit. Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to the latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Most Beautiful Sound in the World. I looked over at a law... Written by Barsum Israel. I looked over at her as she huddled in the ditch, pressing her body against the dirt sides of the ground. Pressing her body against the dirt sides as the ground exploded around us. Here we were, on some godforsaken rock in some godforsaken corner of a godforsaken universe. We thought that we were alone. We thought that we were special. The only sapient life in all of space. We were fools. I gripped my rifle tighter and crawled closer to her. The enemy was near. It would be soon. It would soon be over. She looked up and gave me a slight smile. God, she had a way to stop my heart like no other. Here we were, our position about to be overrun, and she still smiled at me. Putting my mouth close to her ear to be heard over the noise of the explosions around us, I yelled, "Stay down! I'm going to take a look." She nodded, wincing as dirt fell on us from a detonation that was much too close for comfort. Steadying myself, I popped up out of the trench, gun raised and sighted to where I thought the enemy would be. And there they were. Two of the bug-like insect creatures were approaching, their advance covered by the bombardment from their... By the their advance covered by the bombardment from their artillery, each carrying their glowing weapons that I knew all too well were deadly. But so was mine. It just didn't glow to give away my position at night. I squeezed off 3 rounds, aiming at the insect on my left, and was startled when my wife also let loose on the one on my right. It seemed she didn't stay down like I asked. Both aliens fell to the ground. Mine was writhing in pain while hers was stone dead. She was always a better shot than me. The bombardment intensified, dirt and stone falling on us as we huddled for safety in our hastily dug trench. There were 8 of us at the start. Now just Ellie and I remained. 4 farmers, 4 families scratching out a life on a rock far from home. Modern-day pioneers. It sounded romantic and adventurous. In reality, it was a hard life, filled with disappointment and struggle. And that was before they came. Before we encountered the bugs. The day they appeared, their ships hovered over our settlement. We panicked, of course, and Michael ran off to send a message to Earth that we were about to make first contact, and that we were not alone after all. We waited to see what they would do, and we did not need to wait long. Out of the 4 ships, 3 seemed to be just transports of some kind, but the 4th had obvious weapons on the hull. That ship started to open fire on our settlement, destroying a building to nothing more than rubble, then moving on to the next. We had no recourse, nothing to fight back with, so we ran and hid. After all our buildings were destroyed, they sent the troops. A dozen well-armed insects started scouring the landscape, firing on us when they saw us. Jonathan and his wife Lucy tried to surrender. As soon as they showed themselves, however, the energy weapons the bugs carried literally tore them in half. After that, we just ran and hid more. We adopted a guerrilla warfare tactic, firing from hidden positions, killing a few bugs, and then we would run again. The war of attrition would not last. For every one of the bugs we killed, 2 more would land and start hunting us. One by one, I saw my friends, my neighbors die to those horrible weapons. And now, Ellie and I were cowering in a trench as the enemy approached and preparing to sell our lives as dearly as we could. Without notice, the bombardment ceased. I looked at Ellie, realizing that it was almost over, that the bugs were going to be scurrying across the pockmarked and bombshell-ridden landscape to end our lives, so they could start their own colony here. I was surprised to see Ellie with a ghost of a smile on her lips, her beautiful eyes looking far away at something I could not see. "Ellie!" I hissed, gripping my rifle tight. Her eyes regained their focus,
and looked at me as she said, "It was all worth it, Jacob. I love you." God, she always had a way to make my heart stop in my chest. God, I loved her. I could not even reply that I loved her to before she let out a yell, stood up, and started firing her rifle at the oncoming bugs. I could not leave her do it alone, so I followed suit, cycling my weapon at every insect. Cycling my weapon at every insect-looking bastard trying to cross the field. The return fire was white-hot plasma flew by us, some coming so close it singed the hair off my arm, but we kept firing. I saw Ellie reach for another clip to reload a rifle as I drew down on a bug scurrying at her too close. As I drew down on a bug scurrying at her to close the distance and end it. It was close, so very close to her. I pulled the trigger and heard a hollow click of the pin hitting an empty chamber. I was out of ammo. The bug reared back, aiming the glowing rifle it held at my beautiful wife's face. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Ellie, still smiling, look right at the bug above her head, a look of defiance and contempt on her face. God, how I loved her. God, how I wish I could protect her. And then the bug exploded. We were both covered in a spray of greenish ichor. I was stunned, staring at the small piece of bug that was all that was left of the creature that seconds ago was about to kill my wife. The other insects hesitated, looking around in confusion. Then another one exploded, and another. It was then that I heard the distant thud of large guns firing. Turning around, I saw 3 marine hover jets in the distance, closing in fast, their guns laying waste to the insects around us. The rush of joy, the rush of hope, it cannot be explained. It appeared that Michael's message got through, and Earth sent some backup just in case it was needed. And thank God they did. Missiles streaked overhead, impacting on the warship the bug sent, causing a cascade of explosions, and crashing it to the ground. The hover jets roared overhead of the ditch we were in, and I threw myself on Ellie to cover her body with my own. I could not risk anything happening to her. Not now. Not when we were so close to our salvation. Glancing up, I saw troops fly. Glancing up, I saw troop ships fly low to the ground, pouring out Marines and taking off again. The sound of human voices echoed in the air. The sound of weapons firing rang in the distance. It was the most beautiful sound in the world to me. And as I lay there in the ditch on my wife, I felt her arms And as I lay there in a ditch on my wife, I felt her arm snake around my neck and pull me closer as she kissed my cheek. "I love you so much," she said. And as once again she made my heart skip a beat, I realized I was wrong before. This was the most beautiful sound in the world to me. End of story.
That's 4 liters of water down. Blech. A lot of the one-shots are written that way. Never know really why. Telling a small story in a big universe, I suppose. No, stop doing that. Story number 2. Never double-cross someone who decapitates their enemies for fun. Written by Hail Satan. Axel was born in one of the many unincorporated fiefdoms in the Plainus region. He was a dwarf rat growing up. A wharf rat. He was a wharf rat growing up, doing odd jobs at the local spaceport. When he was old enough, he signed aboard a long-haul freighter to get the hell out of there. When it was intercepted by deep space pirates, he chose to join the crew and thus began his long and bloody career as a pirate and mercenary. Once the Human Commonwealth Peacekeeper Alliance set his bounty to 4 million digital credits, he opted to exile himself and took his bloodthirsty ways to the outer edge far from human-held space or territory subject to Galactic Alliance. In other words, a lawless no-man's land. This region was rife with criminal cartels and violent outlaws. He fit right in. Being a Class 10 sapient gave him a competitive edge when most of his fellow mercenaries were somewhere between Class 5 and Class 7. Most recently, he had been working for an up-and-coming cartel run by a notorious Kagato/Jev. Kagato/Jev. Most recently, he had been working for an up-and-coming cartel run by notorious Kagato Jev. Kagato Jev was a Renick, a race of Class 7 mammals, who resembled a very fat stout. Axel had risen up the ranks of the cartel from hired muscle to hitman to enforcer. The boss had tasked him with finding out why their main C-37 lab hadn't made any money in 2.5 dialysis cycles. He now stood in front of the Kagato Jev in his office/dining room.
So they...
Oh, he'll do that.
So, they thought that they could go into business for themselves,
Kagato Jev asked, partial masticated food spilling from his mouth. They sold directly to the dealers and kept the money, replied Axel. Jev laughed, slobber dripping down his jaw.
You take care of it,
Axel grinned. They're dead. They're dead. I mounted their heads on spikes outside the spaceport, just like you wanted.
Everyone should know better than to... Everyone should know better than to betray Jev the beheader.
Jev gobbled down a chunk of foodstuffs.
So where is my money? It should be about 250 crowns in credits. It should be about 250,000 credits.
Oh, I have it. Oh, I have it.
Good, give it to me.
No.
What?
Jev almost choked on his dinner.
No, I think I'll keep it. What?
Jev exclaimed again.
I'm going to keep it,
Axel told him.
The gang were keen to give it up once I started peeling their skin, and after all my hard work, I reckon I deserve a big payday. Call it severance. Severance? Severance?
Jev screamed.
I will give you severance. I will have your head.
What are you going to do? Axel laughed. I'm a human. We're from a Class 10 world. Your deadliest killers could be crushed by one of our children. You're not even a threat to me. With that, Axel turned and walked out. Kagato Jev pulled out a kinetic pistol. pulled out a kinetic pulse pistol and fired angrily at Axel's back. The pulses impacted ineffectually against Axel's tactical vest. The two burly bodyguards moved to intercept him, but reconsidered when they realized who they were up against.
You will not get away with this, human, Jeb yelled after him. You think that you are the worst killer I have? You haven't met my assassin yet, but you will. No one double-crosses Jeb the header.
Axel smiled smugly to himself as he made his way out of Golgotha Jeb's luxury apartment with the impotent minions casting dirty looks his way. Whatever Golgotha Jeb had, he could handle it. He was an experienced mercenary with a kill count of 35 before he even encountered these Xenos with their fragile bodies and lackluster weapons. He was the biggest, baddest mother rapper. He was the biggest, baddest mother in the sector, and it'd take anti-vehicle weaponry to even slow him down. Still, it was worth taking precautions. He caught the next shuttle off-world, and once they arrived at their destination, he paid a smuggler to drop him at a seething shantytown. At a seething shantytown in a territory controlled by a cartel rival to Golgotha Jeb's. He was careful. He changed his appearance, wore body armor wherever he went, and made it clear that he was a kill first, ask questions later kind of guy. The locals left him alone, and the cartel were happy to take his credits in exchange for privacy. This went well for 3 solar cycles. He lived a life of hedonism and paranoia, mixing moonshine and redneck hookers with weapon maintenance and security checks. Until one day, when he was getting back from his favorite bar, he noticed that the door to his tent was ajar. Instantly alert, he ducked into the shadows and drew his sidearm, a custom triple-barreled las gun. He crept up on the door. The mag lock on the DNA scanner must have been hacked. He had added a manual key lock himself, but that too had been picked. Peeking through the doorway, the interior was unlit. His primary booby trap had been dismantled and the secondary booby trap was disengaged. A little bit of fear crept into Axel's mind. Xenos didn't do this. They didn't think like this. He entered, gun ready. The familiar space suddenly fraught with potential hostility. The familiar space suddenly fraught with potential hostility. His calculating gaze swept the living space. All clear, nothing out of place. There was a dim light coming from his sleeping quarters. Stealthily. Greetings, Field. Hope you're doing well. Stealthily. Coming from quarters. Stealthily, the big brute of a man moved in on the opening. As he reached the threshold, he beheld an unexpected sight. Laying on his bed was a female, a human female, a very attractive human female, a very nude, very attractive human female. At this point in the narrative, a writer would most likely use words like curvaceous, sensual, and probably pert a few times until the reader has to go and have a cold shower. So we'll dispense with that and simply accept that her appearance hit Axel like that her appearance hit Axel in the libido like a sledgehammer. But he kept his wits about him. This was obviously a trap, and he was not going to be fooled. He pointed his gun at her. "Who are you?" he barked. She turned her sultry eyes towards him. "Oh, there you are," she murmured seductively. "Don't try that sexy crap on me," he snapped. "It won't work." His eyeline slipped down to her breasts before he caught himself. She laughed lightly. "You've been a naughty boy, Axel. That's why Jev sent me to collect your head. Now was Axel's turn to laugh. "You're Jeb's assassin. What are you gonna do? Smack me to death? Which you can't even touch me." "Oh, I didn't say I was an assassin." A shadow moved behind Axel, and a razor-sharp blade ran across his throat, bisecting his carotid, his windpipe, and his jugular. Axel dropped his gun and tried desperately to hold his lifeblood. Axel dropped his gun and tried desperately to hold in his lifeblood with his fingers. The woman got up off the bed. "I'm the distraction."
Axel slumped to the floor, gurgling, crimson blood spilling forth. A slim, black-clad figure stepped over the rapidly exsanguinating Axel and pulled a mask to reveal the delicate features of another female human. "You've got this one, I got the last one," she said to her naked compatriot as she dug Axel's credit chip from his arm, using the same knife she had slit his throat with. The naked woman sighed and reached under the bed to retrieve a bag. When will people learn? She pulled an auto-serrator out of the bag and turned her attention to decapitating the recently deceased Axel. No one double-crosses Jeff the Beheader. End of story.
A bit of a weird one.
Unusual, if you will. Oh, we stretch.
Alrighty. Time to wind down. I think that is going to be me for the day. That was 7 videos. It was 6 videos. 6 videos. 15,000 words. It's a good way. Day's work. Thank you all for joining me for this live stream. It's very much appreciated. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. I do appreciate everyone, their attention, especially in this modern world where attention is pulled in every which way. I do appreciate you spending your time and attention with me. I hope you all have a fantastically awesome day, night, work day, sleep, whatever it may be for you. I'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.
Set sail on a ship, to the stars we shall roam, through the vastness of space, no place like